Well, the 2024-25 season was pretty eventful for the Blues' top four defensemen. Colton Parayko, of course, had a career year. Cam Fowler, after being traded to the Blues from the Anaheim Ducks, came to life in St. Louis. And Philip Broberg, of course, had a breakout season. We've talked about that a lot here on Note News. So with key players sticking around in the top four and young players like Logan Mailloux entering the picture on the blue line, how does the Blues' top four compare with the league's contenders? How effective can they be in the upcoming 2025-26 season? Is this top four ready to compete for a Stanley Cup, or are they still missing something? If so, what might that be? We're going to talk about all that and more today on Note News. Welcome into Note News. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast. It's John and Alec back with you. We talk about all things Blues, and we're doing off-season content right now as we ramp up to the preseason. I think it's, like 2 weeks away now, Alec? We're really getting close here to hockey season. So I'd say, like, in terms of our sort of hockey season calendar, it's kind of safe to say we've turned the page on last season, and we're kind of in new season mode, I would say. It's still off
Mhm.
season, but we're getting pretty close here. Starting to feel pretty real. So we try to go live twice a week. We've been going live about once a week lately with some busy schedules, but we should ramp back up as we get closer to the hockey season. So be sure to come back for all things Blues and join the chat live if you can. So if you haven't already, we'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that button, follow, rate, review wherever you listen. We're on Spotify and Apple, and then follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. Post a lot of other great stuff over there and announce when we're going live, so you never have to miss an episode. And I also want to go ahead and plug this here at the top. We are doing a Note News Fantasy Hockey League. If you haven't heard yet or haven't seen posted on our socials, yeah, so we are. It's free to participate. All those who want to participate can. As of right now, we are not limiting slots or anything like that. So please sign up. You'll get placed in a league. However many we need to make, we'll make, and Alec and I will be in each one of them. So you get to compete against Alec and myself in fantasy hockey, as well as some fellow listeners or viewers. So go check out our socials. We have the link to the sign up form. It's a Google form. We've also put it in the show notes of this video, and when we upload the audio, we'll put it in the show notes as well. I'm also going to go ahead and drop it in the chat. But Alec, why don't you sort of tell the people what you're most excited about with this fantasy league?
Yeah, I mean, fantasy hockey is kind of a weird one. Like fantasy football, obviously, is super popular. Um, excuse me, sorry. Fantasy baseball is also has like kind of a niche following. Fantasy hockey doesn't really have the same kind of coverage and same kind
Mm-hmm.
of respect. But I've played in a couple leagues. What we'll be doing is head-to-head points, so it sort of emulates a baseball or a football, which I think is the best way to get engagement about excuse me, engagement in the league itself. Just because every week you can tune in, see if you can beat the person across from you rather than tallying up points over the totality of the season, which I
Right.
think is kind of part of the reason why fantasy hockey is maybe not as successful, but that's neither here nor there. Um, Mostly just we're excited to include the viewers, you the viewers, in what we do, and part of what we want to do is provide interactive content, and the best way we figured to do that was with a fantasy league. So if you're interested, if you have any knowledge of players outside the Blues, I highly, highly recommend you try it. Beyond, like, if you are truly just a Blues fan, and only really know Blues players, you still can play. There's still room for you for sure. But if you're perhaps tentative about not wanting to join, excuse me, not wanting to make a fool of yourself or whatever, like, we're just looking for people to have some fun, and it's a very low stakes league. There's no buy-in or anything, so there's really no downside if you never end up checking it. That's your prerogative, but we're trying to just create a fun interactive community thing to do here. So yeah, sign up with the link in the description, link in the chat, link on our socials, on our YouTube post page. It's everywhere around. Just enter, all we need is your email. Excuse me, sorry. All we need is your email to sign up. Yeah, I know I'm a mess today, John. All we need is your email to sign up, and then we will email you the invite link. And yeah, it should be a ton of fun.
I also just want to add, if you don't know a lot of players around the league, playing fantasy is one of the best ways to learn. So if you're interested in learning more about the current landscape of the NHL and who's hot and who's not, fantasy is like a great way to do it. So pretty low stakes, like we said, just trying to have fun. And winner gets bragging rights. We'll give shout outs on the pod um, for those who do well and all that stuff. So yeah, come and play some fantasy hockey with us.
Depending on the leagues, and this is new information, John doesn't know this. Depending on the leagues and how many sign up, if there aren't too many leagues, we might do a giveaway for the winner of fantasy. And by that, I mean I might do a giveaway for the winner of fantasy.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
sign up. There could be something in it for you. And it should be fun.
So let me ask you this: what's to stop you from rigging the league so that one of us wins and gets the prize?
Well, you see, I've already done that, so the
Okay,
viewers don't know. No, I'm kidding. Um,
that would be fun. That'd be a fun way to sort of
yeah,
incentivize some buy-in there. Well, cool. Um, why don't we go ahead and get to our episode content? So yeah, go sign up if you haven't. We'll ask for your contact info and then send more info about how we'll get that league started later on. But today we are here to talk about the Blues' top four defensemen, which I think is a great sort of build off of one of the questions you posed on our last episode, Alec. We had Sam, who is over on Twitter, is STL Analytics. He posted a ton of great stuff over there. Go check him out. We had Sam on last episode. That was a great like State of the Union sort of Blues check-in. So if you haven't, go check that out after you check this one out, and sort of hear us break down the offseason with Sam and preview the upcoming season. Alec, you posed a question about can the Blues defenseman core be sort of a top 10-ish or a top half? I can't remember how exactly. I think you said top 10 unit in the league. I think we were a little bit skeptical about them doing that next year. At least I was. But I think this is sort of a great way to build off of that question, sort of expand the conversation a little bit and really feel this whole thing out. So we're going to be breaking down lineup construction wise, who will factor in on the top four. Could we see some sort of shifting within those pairs themselves? We'll answer some questions about the individual players, and then we're going to compare the top four particularly. Like we might talk a little bit of the third pair as well, but they're just don't factor in on the ice as much, and so I think the conversation gets a little bit less interesting, but comparing the Blues D-core with some of the league's best. And then at the end, sort of talking about what they need to do, if anything, with this D-core to get them Stanley Cup ready, right? To get them ready to take that next step and not only compete for the playoffs, but contend. So we're going to be breaking all that down today. So why don't we go ahead and get started with that lineup construction piece? And I think it's pretty safe to say we did this a similar exercise with the Blues top six forwards a couple weeks ago as well, answering some similar questions with the top six, and that conversation was a little bit, as far as who plays where, it was a little bit more nuanced, and there were some, it didn't feel as like there could be as much of a consensus as there does with this conversation, because I think the top four is pretty much going to be what we saw last year, in that it will be Fowler and Parayko on the top pair, Broberg and Falk on the second. You might see, I wouldn't really be surprised if we saw, for instance, and this is sort of jumping ahead a little bit, but if we saw some guys like Broberg or Mailloux jump up and sort of take a spot or something like that at some point in the season. But I think it's pretty safe to say it'll be Fowler, Parayko, and Broberg, Falk. Alec, do you agree?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So starting with that top pair, it feels like last year Fowler and Parayko performed pretty close to what their ceiling would be, I would say. Maybe there's a little bit left in there, but I would say it was like a top quarter percentile outcome, at least, maybe even higher than that. Um, so I think the question with both of these guys, because they're sort of they're not old in the grand scheme of things, especially for defensemen. But they are getting there. I think Cam Fowler is kind of could at some point soon enter the twilight of his career. He'll be, I think, 34 this year. If he's not already, I can't remember. I think yeah, turns 34 in December. Whereas Colton Parayko, he's 32. He'll turn 33 next May. So they're not like not old guys or anything like that. I don't think they've earned old guy status, but they're vets for sure. And so there will be some kind of drop off coming at some point for these guys. The big question is, how soon does that come? I think with the upcoming season, um, the big question for them as a unit is can they repeat what they did? Can they perform sort of to the best of their ability, or will either one of them kind of fall off a little bit? And so that's sort of the bigger question. But I got an individual question first, right? How can Parayko? Let's start with him. How can Parayko? I think he's pretty much the consensus number one guy. How can he follow up on his career year? Like last year was the best season of his career, right? I mean, he had 16 goals, 20 points, or sorry, 20 assists, excuse me, 36 points total. Set a career high in goals by 6. Set a career high in points by 1. He's hit 35, I think, 3 times. So I think the big question for him is how does he follow up on a career year? Alec, do you see him putting up similar numbers, taking a step back, or do you think there's maybe even more, in there for Parayko?
Yeah, I think Pareko is the right place to start for this conversation, just because he is the number one guy. And as awesome as Cam Fowler was last season, um, it doesn't really feel right to start anywhere other than Colton Pareko, just as the number one Blues defenseman over the past, ever since Pedro left for sure. And even then, there was probably not a conversation, but I don't know. Maybe you could make a case or something for it. But with Pareko, I think that there's every reason to think that he could repeat what he did last year, despite having a career season. As you said, just absolutely scoring off the charts numbers as a defenseman who isn't typically thought of as a goal scoring leader, scoring 16 goals and 36 points. I think Pareko could get north of 30 points again. I don't know if he gets 16 goals, maybe by season's end. Um, but I typically are with Jim Montgomery leading this defensive core to new heights that all of them had not previously really seen before. I trust in Pareko and I trust in Jim Montgomery to repeat and have another terrific season. Maybe not at the 16 goal threshold, but somewhere around 10 to 15 goals and somewhere around 30 to 35 points for a full season's worth. And that would be equaling what he did last season in only 64 games, missing out on, if my
Mm,
math is correct, 18 games,
hmm.
something about that.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of expect him to repeat. I think Pareko scored a lot of his goals in tight, close to the net, which isn't really a very fluky statistic or a very fluky way to score goals. That's absolutely something that he can continue to do is play up closer to the net, play crashing down towards the goaltender, and continue to finish some chances. I trust in Pareko to do so. I trust in Montgomery Hockey to lead him to the front of the net, and I kind of expect Parayko to repeat. He's still in the prime of his career as just a 32-year-old hockey player. There's not a lot of regression that can be expected at this point in his career. It'll come soon, but not yet. And I'm have full confidence in Parayko. If he can stay healthy, I think he can put up another 35-point season, like pretty easily.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I share in your optimism in that I don't expect him to take a huge step back. And then yeah, just like the his pace to me was like the big thing, right? As you pointed out, he missed 18 games. He probably could have potentially, could have broken 20 goals if he had played all 82. So missed out on some time in his prime year, or I guess his career year, which is a bit of a bummer. But I kind of trust in his ability to come out and put up another good season. I'm expecting somewhere above 30 points for him. It hasn't been. It's been a long time since we saw him put up consecutive 30-point seasons. He did 3 consecutive 30 plus, 33 plus point seasons to start out his career, and then sort of uh, has been in the 20s for the most part since then. Um, so it's been a while since he's had back to back, productive years like that. But as you said, I think he's still sort of in his prime ish, uh, like portion of his career, and so I don't think it's a crazy expectation for him um, to repeat in some way. So yeah, and then as you pointed out, he scored a lot of his goals up close. Looking at sort of the NHL Edge, which is sort of a NHL like player stat tool. They've got some interesting stats. They've got things like skating speed, shot speed, stuff like that. And they've got shot location for him. He's got 6 of his goals scored in high danger. 3 of his goals scored in mid range. 3 of his goals scored from long range, and then he tacked on 2 from sort of up close to the net, but off to the left a little bit. So he really likes to get up close and personal, like you said, and then continuing to play in Montgomery's system. I think I am also pretty optimistic that um, with that overall team play style sort of meshing really well with how Parayko likes to get things done. Um, I think it's reasonable to expect him to put up another good year. So yeah, CP55. It's been awesome to have this guy on our team for so long, and awesome to see him have a career year last year. Maybe there's something more in the tank. And in terms of like pace, maybe not, but in terms of final production, if he can just stay healthy, he could definitely have a big year. Like he could probably break 40 points if he can just stay healthy and play at a somewhat similar pace as last year, which feels kind of crazy
Yeah,
to say.
40 points would be awesome. I don't know if I'm projecting like a 40-point season from Parayko, but I think expecting him to show off the heights that he hit last season is really not that crazy. Just given how, again, how everything sort of looked and felt around Parayko's play style, and how effective he was just up close in front of the net or in these high danger areas. There wasn't exactly a lot of like there wasn't a lot of I'll choose the word difficulty to his game. Like it all just came so easy to him because of the effectiveness of a Jim Montgomery hockey style. Um, Something that we hadn't really seen before. But there's really, if you think about it, there's no reason to believe that Parayko can't repeat what he did last year because everything that he showed on tape was exactly the kind of thing you'd be looking for a breakout. So I'm almost kind of expecting maybe not another breakout season, but another high end season from Colton Parayko.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think part of what made him so effective was who he was playing with, right? Once Camp Fowler was acquired from the Anaheim Ducks, it sort of allowed Colton Parayko to be playing alongside someone that he didn't have to sort of cover up for, whether it was Nick Leddy or Ryan Suter. There's only so much you can do. Um, for if you're Colton Parayko, there's only so much you can do if you're playing with a much slower or much I don't know, less offensively capable pairmate there, right? Thanks Rob for the gifts, by the way. We appreciate that.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you, Rob.
I appreciate that a lot. So having Cam Fowler come over and sort of help the blue line shuffle into where it really is supposed to be. That was, I think, when Colton Parayko really took off, right? Was having that line mate with him. So I'm sort of losing my train of thought here a little bit, but why don't we go ahead and talk about Cam Fowler and what
Yeah.
we can expect from him next season? Because what we saw from him this year, I mean, he started pretty mediocre in Anaheim in 17 games, only had 4 assists, no goals, but came over to St. Louis and in 51 games scored 9 goals, 27 assists for 36 points. So topped 40 points on the whole, like his entire season. Um, so, I mean, what can we see out of Fowler? It feels like this might be a bigger question, right? Will he start to drop off, or can he have another productive season? Alec, what's your take here?
I really like Cam Fowler coming into the season for a lot of the same reasons that I like Colton Parayko coming into the season. Is that a lot of the things he was doing? I mean, you look at that Winter Classic game, and he was just like flying up and down the ice. It doesn't look like there's a step to be lost with Cam Fowler, and he is older, so he is starting to enter that sort of danger zone of aging regression that you might look for in a defenseman. But even then, like Fowler as a guy makes a lot of his points based off of assist numbers and um, like getting in a good spot in the offensive zone, whether that be in front of not necessarily in front of the net, but like in the slot or in the high slot. Um, and yeah, I think with Fowler, there could be a level to drop just because of his age and solely for that reason. But even then, I still really like his chances at repeating what he did last season. Again, I don't think I would necessarily expect the pace to be the same, like you said. I like how you put that. But I think the overall production of where Fowler ended up last year could end up looking the same, which would be a very successful season for a player his age. Um, if he can get back to the same level of, 40-ish points as a first pair defenseman. And the thing is that he works so well with Colton Parayko that there is just so much to like about Fowler. I think the biggest thing about Fowler last season, or one of the biggest things, was his goal scoring. Put up 9 goals, which was close to a career high. His career high is 11, which he hit in 80 games in 2017 in Anaheim. Um, in that 2017 season where he scored 11 goals, he had a 5.9 shooting percentage. So it was just shooting a ton of pucks at the net, not converting a lot of chances. This season in St. Louis, he scored 9 goals in 51 games with a 12.7 shooting percentage, which to me tells a story that there's a lot of that he really likes playing in this Jim Montgomery system, and additionally, that there's perhaps something is clicking in this system for him. Not only is he scoring close to his career high, but he's doing it at a much more efficient rate. Despite being a 33, 34-year-old defenseman, he's being much more efficient than he had been in previous seasons in his career because he's able to play off of Parayko's in tight game and maybe play a little bit back. You see a lot of his goals come from sort of the high slot area or just straight up in the slot. Um, and that's where I like Fowler um, as a wild card to this Blues offense. What can they really be uh, coming down the stretch and everything? I think Cam Fowler is a huge part of that, but I really like their chances with Fowler to be to repeat what they did last season, just because everything that he was doing again was done so in very repeatable, very efficient, and very um, expected outcome kind of ways. Their expected goal shares was so effective because of the way that they were producing was very similar to how they had been producing throughout their careers, just under a better system with a better team. So I like Cam Fowler for the season. I hope it's not just the hope like flowing through me, but I'm very, very interested and intrigued, and I think there could be a big season coming from number 17.
Yeah, I like the way you said it. They had seasons, they had good seasons in a way that feels pretty repeatable. And for that matter, Cam Fowler has kind of done that for a few seasons now. 40 points last year, 39 the year before, 48 the year before that, and 42 the year before that. So he's been right around that 40 range. Sometimes a little over, sometimes a little under. But he's been right around that range for a long time now. I think at what 33 did I say? Yeah, at 33 years old, I think it's fair to expect him to keep that up, at least for another year or two. And so, yeah, I like the way you put that. Um, and just as far as like where Cam Fowler is most valuable, I think this is another sort of maybe a good point to touch on with the top pair. How are these two valuable both as a unit and individually? So Cam Fowler to me feels more of like the offensive guy. He took like close to well, I mean like close to 50, maybe even more than 50 if my math is right. Shots from long range last year, shots on goal that is. Um, he took quick math almost 20 to 25 goals from mid range, and then or excuse me, shots from mid range, and then
Shots, yeah,
tacked on an additional nine in high danger areas. So he was sort of pretty balanced as far as as in the grand scheme of things, pretty balanced as to where he was taking shots, scoring goals. Again, pretty balanced. He got some in high danger, got some in that mid range area, and then some from further out. The one thing I've sort of thought about with him is, as you pointed out, shooting percentage wise, he last year was what? What'd you say? 10.2,
12.7 in St.
12.7
Louis.
in St. Louis. I think on the season it was it was 10.2.
Yeah,
That's like 10.2 is, according to NHL Edge, 94th percentile for the league. That part feels a little unsustainable to me. So he's probably going to have
sure.
to, um, you know, the goal scoring might take a step back, or maybe it'll be a quantity thing, right? If he can increase the shots he's taking, then he can put up some similar numbers. But anyways, that's the one thing that I've got my eye on. So yeah, he feels more offensive to me. Colton Parayko feels more like a both sides of the puck kind of guy. How did these two feel to you? Like, where do you think the value comes from with these two, both as a unit and as individuals? And then we'll go ahead and talk about, start to segue towards the second pair a little bit.
Well, I think before we get to the second pair, I think the most exciting thing about Cam Fowler and Colton Parayko is their abilities together. The way that they match up together as a unit is kind of rare in the grand scheme of things. Like in terms of how effective you can be as a top pair, they're a very unique top pair in that you have a more typical defensive guy. Typically it's like your all-star do-it-all defenseman and then a second pair guy who just doesn't suck pairing with him. But Cam
Yeah.
Fowler and Colton Parayko sort of play off each other and like fill in the gaps for everything that the other person is missing. Where Colton Parayko is good at goal scoring, Cam Fowler is good at getting assists. Where Colton Parayko is good at playing back defense, Cam Fowler is good in the neutral zone. Where Colton Parayko has more of an ability to um, play in transition, Cam Fowler has a better ability on the rush. And all of these things sort of combine together to make like a very unique but very effective top pair that I really like their chances as a unit more so than as individual players. That almost like we're sort of talking about how we're expecting or at least hoping for Cam Fowler and Colton Parayko, excuse me, to be good in their own rights on an individual basis just because they were last season and could have that once again. Beyond just that, even if they both repeat or even if they are unable to repeat the seasons that they just had, but still provide like individual okay metrics, as a unit, they're going to be very, very effective because of the ways that they play off of each other's skill sets and play into each other's strengths that I think is so underrated about like in a very almost unquantifiable way. I think Cam Fowler and Colton Parayko are kind of like a match made in heaven of defensive pairs because of the way that they fill in the gaps in each other's play style. That makes them like such an effective top pair unit that's so hard to find because you typically don't find complementary skill sets like this that you're able to mix and match on the top pair. Typically you have to put your best guy on the top pair and then your second best guy to be the number one on your second pair. That's not the case with Parayko and Fowler, is that you're able to have in the aggregate a very, very good top pair that I almost think their strengths become even stronger when you put in the context of them playing with each other.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Um, yeah, I'm excited to see what they got in the tank this year. Um, I think maybe the Cam Fowler extension discussion is one for another time. But obviously, this season has big implications for him as an individual. So I'm excited to see what he can do. And if he is like quarterbacking the top power play, Fowler is, then that could be another opportunity for some individual offense as well. So just wanted to tack that on there at the end. So my next question is sort of halfway between talking about the top pair and the second pair, and it's just sort of, do you see anyone else working their way onto the top pair? And I think it would probably take probably Cam Fowler struggling a little bit in some way to make this happen. I don't see Parayko losing his spot. But do you see maybe like you know, I mean, it's probably would have to be Broberg, right? Like I don't really see Falk working up or Mailloux or Tucker taking Fowler's spot. So I feel like it would have to be a combination of Fowler not doing too hot and Broberg having a great year. Do you see that happening at all this season? Do you see any kind of shuffle of who is playing where in the cards at all?
I think Mayu could get there once, Pareka reaches the twilight of his career and um, you're looking for a spot to open up. And he would be sort of more of a Devin Taves type of number one defenseman, which is still very, very good. Don't get me wrong. But I think for this coming season, Broberg is the only one that really has a realistic shot at getting there. Just being honest about where all these guys are in the various stages of their career. Um, no one is really pushing Parayko and Fowler. If he isn't a top pair guy, which I think he is, then he just, to be honest, doesn't really have a spot on this team because, like, if you put him on the second pair and move Broberg up, that could work. But then you've got a defensive pair of Justin Falk and um, Cam Fowler. And if Cam Fowler's struggling in that instance, then there's really not a lot of upside on that second pair. And that very quickly becomes a weakness, which I don't think is going to happen. Let me be clear. Um, so I think Berberg's the only guy even pushing it. And I think this season isn't the season to find out if Philip Broberg is a top pair guy, because I think Philip Broberg will be a top pair guy in his career. I just think that the opportunity is still there for Cam Fowler, and it honestly should be, because he of what he's shown up to this point. I'm not really doubting his abilities, and I think that Broberg could overextend himself with that level of minutes, to where it could actually hurt his development, which is the last thing you'd want.
Mhm.
So I'm still watching for Fowler and Parayko pretty much to finish out the season.
I think I'm in the same boat, and really, I think it would take something significant for that to happen. Um, yeah, I just think what you saw with, as we said, Fowler and Pareko as a unit, and you know, Monty trusting those two together. Um, I don't see a shakeup coming, but maybe if Broberg just erupts and goes crazy. But then again, like it could make sense to keep that high level talent sort of split up between the top two pairs. Then you might have two great units. So that sort of gets us onto our next question, or our next topic here, talking about the second pair. As we said at the top, this would is most likely going to be Broberg Falk. We'll talk a little bit in a bit about anyone else that could work their way onto that pair. Who do you want to start this with? Do you want to talk Broberg, or do you want to talk Falk first?
I think I want to let you cook a little bit here and
Talk
go
about
ahead
Falk. All
and
right.
tell the people about your boy.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
playing.
Justin Falk.
Philip Broberg. Yeah, I mean this is my man. I'm gonna try really hard not to just. I we have an impressive streak going, I think, right now, of me talking about Broberg on every episode we've done for the past little while. I Every time I talk about it, I'm like, we talked about this last time. For those of you that don't know, Broberg is actually my favorite player. I'm not being sarcastic or tongue in cheek or anything. I just really like the guy. I really like what he brought to the Blues this past season. I mean, that offer sheets move paid off better than we could have hoped. And once Fowler came in, it felt like it was Fowler and Broberg together. But Broberg was a big part of it, especially early on. He sort of the two of them together. But for the purposes of this conversation, I'm leaning more Broberg. Sort of made the top four altogether really, really solid. Helped make that top four a playoff contender worthy top four. Fowler really helped balance out that top pair, but to be a contender for the playoffs, you gotta have more than that, right? You gotta have your second pair, sometimes your third pair as well, contributing somehow, but you really need that second pair to be pretty solid as well. So, Broberg Broberg did that for the second pair. He's a fantastic skater, and just sort of has a great hockey IQ to me. And so, watching him play, where he shines most is on defense. I mean, just the way he uses his body, his stick, and mostly his skating to close gaps, to challenge opponents as they're trying to enter their offensive zone and Blues defensive zone. Um, the way he's just sort of able to read the play, and he's a young guy. Everyone makes mistakes. It happens sometimes, but more often than not, he gets a great read on the play, and he sort of makes a decision and then acts on it, and is just really excellent at shutting stuff down. So defensively, he's fantastic. I think having him uh, on that pair with Falk really helped that balance out and become more stable defensively. And then offensively, we didn't see like a huge season. We thought we were going to at the beginning. He sort of broke out with some offense early on in the season, and we didn't know what we might see. He cooled off a little bit, but finished with 8 goals, 21 assists, 29 points, so just under 30 points. It's pretty respectable, for a guy as young as him, playing his first really, extended season. Not quite a full season. He didn't get all 82, but he played 68. So it's respectable. But in terms of individual offense, he doesn't do a whole lot, right? Like he scored a decent number of goals for his age, for his minutes, for his games played. But beyond that, not a lot. Where he really shines, and this is where I'll throw in my new term for this, which is Broberg theory. Where he really shines is helping the team around him play offense as a whole. The way he uses his skating to sort of generate offense, the way he sort of is able to distribute, I really like watching. So Broberg is gosh, I just love the kid. He's such an exciting young defenseman. The ceiling for him is super exciting, as Matt in the chat pointed out. He says, I feel like Broberg's ceiling is huge. Holloway is crazy good too, but I think Broberg has as a defenseman, has a crazy two-way ceiling. So yeah, I agree there. I think there's more in the tank for him individually in terms of offensive production. That really feels like the only area of his game that I want to see more out of him from. I like defensively, I think he's got it. In terms of pace of play offensively, I think he's got it. I just want to see a little bit more on the individual offensive basis. I want to see him taking some more shots. I want to see him scoring some more goals. I want to see him getting some more assists, sort of racking all that up. That's what I want to see out of Broberg. And so I'll sort of throw this to you now with this question. Do you think he can do that this coming season, or do you think it'll be a little bit longer before we see him take some steps individually on the offensive side of the puck?
Yeah, that's the big question with Broberg is how quickly does it come? Because I think everyone who's watched his tape knows that it's coming soon for Broberg, but the question is does that come this season or into the future? I do think it comes this season. I do think that there's an offensive upside to be unlocked with Philip Broberg, as that should be able to make a statement. I mean, not the best statistic, but a plus 21 last season within a down offensive year for him is impressive to say the least. Um, and I think he can get those numbers up. I have fully bought into Broberg theory that there is every reason to think that he should be able to increase his offensive production just because of sort of bad puck luck and getting um, muscle or getting just out tapped on the play just a little bit, like getting one extra pass to get him out of the play. Excuse me. Sorry. Um, I think with Broberg, there's every reason to think that he should be getting better just because the rest of his stats aren't really like that incredible or that like crazy to think that it isn't something repeatable. A shooting percentage of 8.2%, that's not like that high. That, if anything, could probably go up. And if that does go up, then he's already scored 8 goals. Then you're looking at a 10-goal defenseman, which sounds better to where he might sit. Also, only played 68 games. If he can get through the full season healthy, which there's no reason to think that he can't up to this point. Now, if he has one more season of injury question marks, then we can start to get into that discussion. But there is sort of no reason to go against Broberg here, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of Broberg's game in transition as well as in the offensive zone. I think he has a really smart hockey IQ that raises the ceiling of what he could become. And he was only 23 last season. Like, there's every reason to think that the up arrow should be on this guy as a player getting better in the prime of his career. Not even in the prime of his career, entering the early stages of his career, still had a fantastic season as a young defenseman. And because of that, I think I'm pro Broberg and pro Broberg only getting better.
Broberg. Yeah, I agree. Um, so this sort of brings me to the other side of the question, which is Justin Falk. And he feels like the sort of the main target of hate from Blues fans in the past couple years. And it's, I think, I don't want to say it's misplaced because he definitely hasn't been great. But I think a lot of the ire is coming from the fact that he's being paid a lot and not sort of playing up to that. Uh, I think the frustration in that case should be, with the front office for giving him that contract. I think that's where the frustration should be placed. I think Doug Armstrong has done a lot in the past couple of years, especially to sort of earn our trust back with some great moves like the offer sheets and the Monty signing and the Cam Fowler trade. But yeah, it feels like he's the guy that Blues fans really want to hate right now. Um, it's he had 50 points in 22-23. He had 47 the year before that. Um, I mean, I didn't realize. I forgot he had 50 points. So I guess he was the last 50-point defenseman for the Blues. Um, and let's see, last year had 32. The year before that had 30. So he had a drop off from the couple seasons before that. Um, so the big question with him, he's 32, no 33, turned 33 in March. The big question with him is like which one are you getting? Are you getting the close to 50-point defenseman, or are you getting the low 30-point defenseman? Like it he went from 50 to 30 in one season. It's kind of crazy. Um, my lean is on the pessimistic side. I don't see him right now. Um, jumping way back up 20-ish points in production. In terms of plus minus, he's only gotten worse. He was -9 last year. Um, and then the other big question is like, how long is he even going to be in St. Louis? A lot of people. There's some in the chat. Matt in the chat, different Matt in the chat. Matt Webb said he's being traded during camp. Um, so yeah, I think there are a lot of Blues fans out there that see a trade coming. I think it was on our list, at the beginning of the offseason to replace him with someone better. At this point, I'd be surprised just because I don't want them to just get rid of Falk. Like that's not going to do them any good just to get him off the team, I don't think. I would want them to replace him with something better or something cheaper. So when I hear that, I don't disagree with the idea that he needs to be replaced, but I do take issue with people wanting him gone just to have him off the team because I think he's probably going to be better or at least more consistent than anyone else you have playing. That isn't on the top pair, playing on that right side on the second pair. So that's sort of a little bit of my soapbox. I don't think he's great, and I'm not saying that I like Falk particularly, but he was solid enough. He was productive enough last year. Um, so a lot of musings there, Alec. But what do you make of that? Like, which Falk do you think we're getting? What are your thoughts on the trade narrative around Falk? And then I guess yeah, like what were your thoughts on his season last year? Like how happy or unhappy are you with his production in recent seasons?
Yeah, I think it's a tough conversation to navigate. Justin Falk, I think, and I do agree with Rob in the chat. When they did sign Falk, it was a good deal. So I don't know
Hmm.
that you can even like put all of this on Army. It just he
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of fell off a cliff.
yeah.
The biggest thing with Falk is that he hasn't been scoring, and that was something throughout his career. I mean, his career high in 2017 was 17 goals scored, and then put up 11, 16, and 11 goals scored in subsequent seasons, including two of those in St. Louis. And then suddenly went from a 16 goal scored, 11 goal scored to 2 goals scored to 4 goals scored, from a 9.6 shooting percentage to a 5.6 shooting percentage to a 1.5 shooting percentage, and then a 3.2% last year. He's just not scoring at all. And it looks like, at least from the tape last year, that he was in better position to do so and just couldn't really hit the net. Like, was fired a lot of his chances outside of the goal crease, and is losing his ability to consistently snipe with accuracy. So, in terms of which Falk I think you're getting, I think we are seeing more the mid 30s points production out of Falk. I think I just don't really trust where he's at in his career. It feels like he's lost that athleticism that made him good when he was playing at a very effective level. and instead is just lost a step and lost his ability to shoot like he once had. If he can get those goals up to even like north of 5 goals, I think that would be a big step for him. But he, for 2 years now, hasn't shown an ability to do so, and I think that's a big problem with Falk on the second pair. Now, he's still an okay defenseman. He's still getting pretty good assist numbers, all things considered. It just he doesn't have the goals numbers to supplement that. So he's still decent enough at registering points. Um, that I think is maybe underrated about his game is that on a pace percentage he's still doing okay. It's just he's not scoring goals, and when he's not scoring goals, he's not the Justin Falk of old, and that's the problem. So in terms of what I want to see out of Falk this year, I want to see him earn that second pair spot. I think there's going to be competition, and I think there should be competition. I think Logan Mailloux can be a guy who can push him already into this season. Now, that would be a little bit tough to have your third pair defenseman as a $6.5 million cap hit, but I think there's at least if Mayu can prove to be a second pair guy, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of ourselves in the discussion here, then you're at least like the team chemistry and the team composition part of it works out well. So with Falk, I think he has lost a step, and I think unfortunately that the numbers are going to continue to decline. And so I'm looking for competition in that second pair right-handed defenseman spot, and that's where a guy like Mayu could step in.
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to get back to that in a second, but just to sort of wrap up the Falk conversation real quick. As you said, like he sort of just lost a step when it comes to goal scoring, and I think part of that is just he's just not taking as many shots as he used to. The shooting percentage has definitely gone down for sure. So I'm going to compare and contrast some numbers. This most recent season, 24-25, I'm going to compare that with his best season in St. Louis, which was in 22-23 when he scored 11 goals, 39 assists, 50 points. Last year had 4 goals, 28 assists, 32 points. So in 24-25, from long range, he put up 54 shots on goal. For mid range, that was 34. High danger, it was 5. All right, so just remember those numbers for a sec, because when you compare that with 22-23, his career, the highest goal total of his career in St. Louis from long range, it went from what did I say, 54. That was 88 in 22-23, and from long range. From mid range, it was 50, and from high danger, it was 17. So he just like shot quantity. He's just not taking those chances right now, and maybe that's a system thing. Maybe that's a change in the Blues' style of play. I don't know. I don't really think it's that, because we saw a career offensive year from Colton Parayko. We saw, some defensemen come alive under Montgomery's system, and so with Justin Falk, it is a little bit baffling. It feels like, as more of an offensive guy, he should be able to flourish under Monty's system. So I don't know if there's something else going on. Like Rob is wondering if maybe he's been playing through injuries or something like that. I don't know. So really, it is a little bit baffling. But in terms of comparing last year with his best season in St. Louis, it seems like a big issue is just quantity, and he's just not putting up the same shot totals that he used to. So I don't know. Just one more thought on Falk. Anything to add there, or do you want to go ahead and yeah, go for it?
Yeah, one thing to add on that is that if it is just quantity that's the problem, that's absolutely something that he can turn around by just taking more shots.
Right.
It's just that it seems like when he does take more shots, they're just missing the net. So if he can find a way to get back in the lab and figure out how to fire pucks on the net, then maybe he can get back to the old Falk that we know. But I just don't see that as super likely, but I think like there is a pathway for him to becoming an impact player on that top 4 pair. And it really isn't that difficult to just take more shots than you had been. But again, I think it's a question of accuracy over everything.
Definitely. So why don't we go ahead and get to? We should move this right along. We're running short on time. Um, so you sort of brought it up, Logan Mailloux. This is a big question surrounding the defense. What can he be? Because I think if he can, if he can be a key part of this decor, a key part of this blue line, if he can emerge ready for the NHL or have a breakout year or something like that, he could turn. It feels like he could turn this blue line, this top four, into like a contender level top four. The other four, if they or the other three, if they play, similarly to how they did this past season, maybe plus a little bit from Philip Broberg or something like that. If Logan Mailloux can be a big part of that, it feels like that could be huge. So um, he had a great year in the AHL. He played 63 games. He had 33 points, 12 goals, 21 assists for Laval Rocket. Year before that, he had in 23-24 had 72 games played, 14 goals, 33 assists, so 47 points. And then in the Calder Cup playoffs in 13 games, he had 6 points, 2 goals, 4 assists. So pretty solid year from Mailloux in the AHL. Do you see him taking on I guess I'll just pose this question. What's the scenario where we see him on the second pair alongside Philip Broberg, most likely, taking that spot away from Justin Falk?
I think it's possible. I think it's something that we could see. The thing is that I think this team is a little bit stubborn to move around the D pairs pretty early into the season, so I think it would have to come around like late November, December before we start to see any real shakeup um in the pairing of the defensemen. But I think Mayu, like at his floor, is close to Falk in like a middle tier outcome for him. Like Falk at 50th percentile, if he's going to be a, 30-point defenseman, Mayu at his floor is probably a 20 or 25-point defenseman anyways. That's like pretty comparable. Now the defense with Mayu does have a lot to go, which is why you might want to see him in sheltered minutes on the third pair. Um, but if he can even hit like a little bit of a green light in terms of the point production, I think you could really start to see Mayu take off and might outproduce Falk anyway, even if he sticks on the third pair. I might personally like to see Mayu stick on the third pair for the entire season. But if you want to talk about just raw point totals and who can produce the most, I think Mayu absolutely is the guy to take over Falk and has a real shot at doing so. If he can even hit his like 50th percentile outcome, he's probably a 35-point defenseman, which is better than Justin Falk has been over the last 2 seasons. So I think there's a real chance, and there's an argument to be made for Mayu to take over on the top four.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm super excited to see what we get out of this kid. Um, well, why don't we go ahead and move on to our next topic, which is comparing this top four with some of the league's best. Defenseman is it feels like a tricky position core to sort of rank,
Very.
and I think a lot of people have different you know different ideas of what makes up a good defenseman core. Um, I think for a long time, Vegas has sort of been the standard, but with the loss of Petro and they traded away some key players in recent years, it feels like maybe their sort of era of dominance is over. My mind goes to the Florida Panthers, of course. I mean, Gustav Forsling, Aaron Ekblad, Seth Jones, pretty solid core there. It's hard to beat Cale Makar you know and company. I mean, what more do you need? Um, I also think of, I mean, obviously, I think of the Carolina Hurricanes. Jacob Slavin is awesome. Shane Gostisbehere, Counter Miller, Jalen Chatfield, and then maybe you see what you get from Alexander Nikishin. I don't know who else. The Oilers, Bouchard is big. Stars, they have Haskin and Harley. The Senators have Shabbat and Sanderson. So there's some good decors out there. Who do you see as sort of the league's best? And then where do you see the Blues sort of ranking um, I guess league wide? I mean, it's hard to put an exact number on it, but in what sort of range do you see the Blues top four ranking?
Well, I think the league's best defenseman or defensive cores is so weird because it feels so top heavy for just about every team, which is kind of the
Yeah.
point I want to make here. In that the best teams are probably like Winnipeg, number one. Um, I would say Carolina's up there for sure. I think Jacob Slavin is so underrated. I think he's so good. Um, I would also put, I don't know, I think Ottawa's up there. I think they have a really, really good depth that's underrated.
Yeah.
Um, but for the most part, I think the best defensive cores go by their top players, and that's where I think the Blues have kind of an advantage is that they don't necessarily have the top defensive options that other defensive cores have, but they have the depth that other defensive cores definitely lack. You know, Parayko, that's what I was kind of talking about with Parayko and Fowler as a top pair.
Hmm.
Either one of them individually is probably not top 20 defensemen, but as a unit, can they be a top 20 top pair? Absolutely. Not there's no question that they're in the top 20. I think they're more of a top 10 top pair as a unit.
Hmm.
Because you're looking at, Cale Makar, like the best defenseman in the league. I don't think that's really controversial to say. If you're looking at Cale Makar, even then, like his defensive his defensive options outside of him, you've got Devin Taves, who's a great goal scorer, but doesn't really offer a lot defensively. And then it's like Josh Manson on the second pair.
My
And
man Brent
like,
Burns.
yeah, they got Brent Burns too. Like you're
He's
really thin
he's an
outside of
ab
that.
now. Yeah.
Um, to where like, yeah, Cale Makar is the best defenseman in the league. You won't hear me saying anything otherwise. He's my favorite non-blue. But in terms of their full defensive top four, where the Blues have the advantage is with their consistency and with their depth.
Hmm.
Philip Broberg absolutely clears their second line pair, which I'm sure you love to hear. Um, I think that the Blues in the aggregate have created a really really nice defensive core of
Hmm.
top four defensemen that when you compare them player to player, and where I really want to take this conversation is with one of the higher ranking defensive top fours in the league, depending on who you ask, is the Dallas Stars.
Hmm.
So again, Miro Heiskanen, one of is a top 10 defenseman in the league, one of the absolute best. Thomas Harley is absolutely an offensive defenseman to be reckoned with and has some good defensive ability. He's probably more of a two-way guy. Um, really, really good. And then Asa Lindell uh, is an interesting piece too that is pretty solid. I think that Dallas has a really nice top three, but then their bottom three outside of that are really, really poor. I know we're only looking at the top four here, but if we were to analyze the entire defensive core, I think this argument becomes a little bit stronger. But I'll base it just off the episode topic of the top four here. The Blues do not have a top four that is better than the Dallas Stars, but do they have a top four that can compete with the Dallas Stars? Nobody on the Blues core is going to match up with Haskin, and I think that's fair to say. However, I think Parayko and Fowler as a top pair, can they be better than Heiskanen and Harley? Again, it's tough to say just because Heiskanen is so, so good. Actually, right now, Daily Faceoff does have Harley on the second pair and Asa Lindell on the top pair. But
Mm.
I'm just going to
That feels
presume they
like
put their
it just feels like an experience thing, and then wanting to split up maybe some of that talent. I don't know.
I for the sake of this, I'm gonna just we're gonna
Yeah.
go best to best here. So
Sure.
if Haskin and Harley were on a pair, that is a better pair than Parayko and Fowler. That's not the argument I'm trying to
Especially
make.
offensively. Yeah.
Yeah, especially offensively. However, can they compete and keep track with Haskin and Harley? I think there's a chance. I think Parayko is maybe the best goal scorer out of anybody on that line. And I think Fowler offers assist numbers that's comparable to Harley that can give you an offensive effort that is at least like close to what the Dallas Stars are getting. And then they've got Lindell and Lyubushkin, who are like an okay defensive pairing. Meanwhile, compared with Philip Broberg and Justin Falk, now we broke down that Falk is already kind of in the twilight of his career and isn't really offering a ton offensively anymore, unfortunately. But can Broberg outplay Asa Lindell and Ilya Lyubushkin? Absolutely, not as a unit. So
He's got
that's
it by
where I
himself.
think, yeah, um, that's the team that I want to compare to. That the Blues are definitely a step behind the Dallas Stars. Make no mistake, that's not the point I'm trying to make here. The Blues are definitely a step behind, but can they play up to that level? Can they compete with a team like the Dallas Stars? I think it's at least there's an argument to be made there. And if you're in the same conversation as a team like the Dallas Stars, who, if you're just looking at top fours alone, have one of the best top fours in the league, that's pretty exciting as a young team that's looking to only improve. And then if you want to get to full defensive units, I think the Blues do at least compete, if not have a better full top six than the Dallas Stars in terms of the defense, because I think their third pair is really, 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 really bad. But that's a third pair. They don't play as many minutes. So if we're looking at just the top four, I think the Blues can be in the conversation with the Dallas Stars, which have one of the best top fours in the league. And maybe it's a bit of a jump, but I am excited to watch this unit because I think they can play up to that level, and that's a really exciting place to be.
Definitely is. I think they can definitely hang with some of the league's best for sure. Um, but yeah, I think if I had to like place it, I would say around top 10. I mean like 10 in
Right.
somewhere in like the 10 to 12, 10 to 15ish range,
Like top third.
top third for sure is sort of how I would place them. And this sort of brings me to my next question is how can they sort of firmly enter the top 10, right? How can they become uh, you know what do the Blues need to add to their top four to really be a cup contender, right? Because I think I don't think it's going, I don't think it's crazy to say that they don't really have quite what they need to compete for a cup in their top four. You probably want to replace Cam Fowler uh, sometime soon, or sort of demote him. Maybe if you're going to keep him around, you're going to want to replace Falk, right? So, what needs to happen in the Blues' top four for this unit to really be? And this is sort of more of a long term question, and we're sort of short on time here, so we can maybe give our elevator takes on it. But like, excuse me, in your mind, what needs to happen for the Blues top four, whether it's an external ad or something they have internally? What needs to happen for it to really take that next step and sort of solidify itself as one of the best in the league, and really get this help get this team to cup contention?
I think it all hinges on the development of Philip Broberg and Logan Mailloux. If Mailloux can establish himself as the de facto like second pair guy, better than Justin Falk, I think that's a huge step for this top four. And if Philip Broberg can be someone who's pushing Cam Fowler for minutes on the top pair, I think that's absolutely enough to say that this is a top 10 defensive core in the league, a top 10, top four. A lot of numbers and tops here, but bear with us. If Philip Broberg can push Cam Fowler for first line minutes, or even overtake Cam Fowler for first line minutes, and if Logan Mailloux can also reach that same level, then I think you're talking about a true legitimate, because then you've got three legitimate first pair options in Philip Broberg, Cam Fowler, and Colton Parayko, and a very, very solid second line option in Logan Mailloux. That to me is a top four that's ready to win a Stanley Cup.
I really like that. I'm sort of thinking, since I'm thinking more long term. I don't know that you really want Cam Fowler to be at least a top pair guy. So maybe either you replace him with someone that produces similarly, Or if you keep him around, you sort of swap him and Broberg maybe, and maybe he can be your second pair guy, late career, providing decent production on that second pair. Also, if you can hear any ambient noise, I apologize. I think we are getting some new upstairs neighbors that are moving in. It's pretty loud. Now, I would extend. So I think your point on the development of some of these key young players is particularly important. Broberg at the top of the list. Mailloux's up there as well. What can he be? If he can be a solid second pair guy, scoring a lot of goals, then yeah, that could go a long way. I would extend that a little bit to what can Adam Juracek and Theo Lindstein be? Maybe you could throw someone else in there, like I don't know, Lucas Fischer or Leo Loof or something like that. Matthew Kessel. From that group, can you get at least one more guy? They're not all going to hit. They're not all going to be winners. Can you get at least one more solid guy that can play maybe second pair minutes? Or do you need to add externally? So I'm thinking development-wise, Philip Broberg, I'm not too worried about it. Logan Mailloux, I think he'll be productive. Can you get another guy, or do you need to go out and add that? And so I'm thinking something like a second pair guy adding externally. Maybe you deal again from your winger depth, or maybe you, go out and sign a big free agent or something like that. That's what I see as what needs to happen to really elevate this pair. But I agree with you. It feels like the most important piece is the development of some key young players that they've already got in the system, and then replacing some aging guys sooner rather than later, maybe with depending on how that development goes. So, yeah.
Love it.
Well, I mean, this has been our top four. Our top four. I don't know, state of the top four, maybe we'll say our top four summary and preview. If you haven't already, go check out an episode we did recently. We did a pretty similar exercise with the top 6 forward group. That was a lot of fun. Go check out our last episode as well. We had Sam at STL Analytics on Twitter. We had him on to react to the Blues off season and then preview the upcoming season. And here as we approach the start of preseason hockey, and we're like a month away from actual regular season hockey. We're gonna try to get going more often and preview the upcoming season. I think pretty soon we're gonna do a Central Division preview. We're gonna do some bold predictions and discuss some of our bold predictions from last year as well. So stay tuned for all of that. And then if you haven't heard already, we're doing a fantasy hockey league. Sign up if you want to play fantasy hockey against Alec and myself, as well as some other viewers and listeners. We've got the link to the Google form to sign up in the show notes of this video, and then we'll add it on Spotify and Apple as well. So if you haven't already, we'd appreciate if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow, rate, review wherever you listen, whether it's on Spotify or Apple. Those ratings, reviews, and follows really do help. And then follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, @NoteNewsPod. Post a lot of other great stuff over there. Come play fantasy hockey with us. Come watch us live, watch us after the fact, all that good stuff. We love interacting with our community and really appreciate all the love that you guys have brought our way. Keep it coming, and we will see you next time. Until then, as always, let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues!